All right, we're just going to get started. It is 7 o'clock. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, Andrea is here. She's joining. Hello. Okay. Teresa is here. Ding dong. Hey, nobody, what are you doing? I'm about to start a lecture.
I'm not here.
So can I ask you to please step outside of the frame, please?
I'm not even here.
I'm serious, Star.
Seriously,
Thank
not
you.
here.
Okay. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and get started. Inhale. Sahana vavatu sahanau bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarotam Pravaramuninam Patanjalim Pranjali Ranatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankachakra Siddharinam Sahasra Shirasham Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Srimate Anantaya Nagarajaya Namo Namaha Namo Namaha Namo Namaha. Om. All right, thank you very much. It is nice to see you once again. So let's start off where we left off. I believe it was second chapter, Sutra 29. Is that correct? Can anybody confirm? We finished the 28th Sutra, correct? Second chapter. So the 28th Sutra, Patanjali he foreshadowed Ashtanga Yoga. So up to this point in the second chapter, he's only spoken about Kriya Yoga, right? Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga. What is Kriya Yoga? Tapas, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Ishvara, Pranidhanani. The 3 steps, right? 3 steps to Kriya Yoga. Tapas, which is discipline of the senses. Discipline of the senses. Swadhyaya, self-study. Swadhyaya, self-study. And Ishvara Pranidhana, which is giving up the fruits of your efforts to a Visesha Purusha, a unique consciousness that is like you and I, but unlike you and I. The fourth thing that Krishnamacharya would add to this, though is not in here, this is a Krishnamacharya edition. He said that asana should be added to Kriya Yoga. Everyone should be doing asanas. Star, I'm in the middle of something. What is up? You have 3 seconds.
Why'd you write on the
Star,
side of the
Star, something we can talk about later, okay? Thank you. Sorry, honey. I have to focus. I love you. Thank you. Okay. So the 29th Sutra, moving on to the 29th Sutra, is Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhyo, Ashtavangani. So right away, he lists for the first time, what is Ashtanga Yoga? What is Ashtanga Yoga? Ashtanga Yoga is Yama, Niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, 8 limbs. Ashta means 8. Vangani means the limbs. So he says here, he basically lists them. It is just telling you what they are. What are the limbs? Moving to the 30th sutra. Now the next few sutras he goes in and describes each one of them succinctly. 30th sutra, ahimsa, ahimsa. Everyone say ahimsa, ahimsa. So ahimsa is the opposite of the word himsa. Himsa is a word that has a sort of a strong aspiration. Ha, himsa. It's like the word hit or hurt or harm. So it's got this sort of ha. So himsa means violence. Ahimsa means non-violence. Ahimsa means non-violence. Hang on a sec here. Do you guys see me or do you see Paul as the primary on your screen?
You.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Sorry, I haven't been on Zoom in a while. It looks like, trying to make sure it's right. I'm recording correctly. Okay. Ahimsa. So ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, yamaha. So here he lists the 5 limbs that make up yama, the yamas. Second word is satya. Everyone say sat. Sat. Satya means, sat means truth, or satya means truthfulness. Truthfulness in communication. Truthfulness in communication. Asteya. Everyone say asteya. Asteya. Steya means stealing. Asteya means the opposite of stealing. Is not taking from someone else, not taking from your neighbor, not taking what is not yours lawfully, not as yours. Brahmacharya. Everyone say Brahma. Brahma. Charya. Charya. Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is normally known as celibacy or abstinence, celibacy or abstinence. It's interesting because a lot of different people will, and I see this online all the time, what is brahmacharya to you? What does brahmacharya mean to you? What do these things mean to you? And I think there's value in that. I think there's value in having one's own interpretation of what these words mean. But I think it's more accurate, if you will, more truthful, satyam, to interpret these teachings the way the yogis want you to understand. Does that make sense? There's when we take something and say, well, what does it mean to me, and then go with that, it's not, we're not staying true to the teachings. Does that make sense to you guys? So brahmacharya is abstinence. It is celibacy. It's not something else. Some people will say that it's moderation. It's moderation. Yeah, but you got to remember, these sutras were written for the yogi. They weren't written for the average person, right? They weren't written for householders necessarily. And so you can take a household sort of viewpoint, but that sort of dilutes the teachings. I want to stay as true to the teachings as possible. Brahmacharya means celibacy, abstaining. Again, this is called the right-handed path. If you want to make brahmacharya something else, like, moderation, or, earlier I saw something online about it. Some lady said that brahmacharya is it's a level of control, so that you are having there's hey Star, can you go to the other room, please? Please, I'm teaching. One.
I'm trying to go.
Okay, go to the room and watch TV in the other room, please. Please. Thank you, baby. There's a whiteboard you can use in there as well, okay? This lady said that brahmacharya was something about having intercourse without ejaculation, and to me that's a left-handed approach. That is a left-handed tantric approach. It's like Kama Sutra stuff. This is the right-handed approach. This is not it's not playing with fire, if you will. Does that make sense? It's not playing with fire. So when we start to make it our own and tweaking it a little bit, it loses its power. Does that make sense? You don't. If you're familiar with the world of professional sports and like race car drivers, professional race car drivers, boxers, martial artists, typically they refrain from having sexual activity before the big race or before the big fight, because it's supposed to, so they can retain their vitality. And when you're on this path, it's very conservative on that level. You're trying to create an environment within the systemic environment so you can achieve the highest state in yoga. And getting there is almost like an Olympic level effort. You are really so committed. I don't know if I've said this in the past, but Ramaswamy, he said that you have to want this more than a drowning person wants to live. Think about that. You have to want this more than a drowning person wanting to live. So if that's the case, are you going to be tweaking what brahmacharya means and going, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to beat this up, but anyways, brahmacharya, it means celibacy, abstinence. Aparigraha. Everyone say graha. Graha. And then pari. So parigraha. Graha means grasping, and pari is like around, so from around. So aparigraha means non-grasping from around. So I'm not clinging to objects around me. Does that make sense? Aparigraha means not clinging to objects. Here, you might see in some books that will say parigraha means non-possessiveness, non-greediness, non-accumulation of worldly things, wealth and fame, etc. Some books, some teachers might even go as far to say that aparigraha is a vow of poverty. It's like living like a monk. You take a vow of poverty. You don't accumulate things. You let go of things. You live a minimal, simple life. Minimal, very minimal. And then, so these 5 are called the yamas. And yama is the first limb of Ashtanga yoga. The yamas, see, a lot of these sutras, actually, all sutras are written very logically. And whenever you find lists in yoga or in any sutra text, they're going to list the most important or relevant topic first. So Yama here being the first limb of Ashtanga yoga, one can assume that the Yama is the most important limb in Ashtanga yoga. Does that make sense? This is the most important limb in Ashtanga yoga. It's not asanas, it's not pranayama, it's not samadhi, it's ahimsa. It's yama. The yamas are 5-fold: ahimsa, satya, steya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. These 5 aspects to the first limb of yoga makes you a good person to people around you. In other words, these yamas are also known as social restraints. Yama means to restrain or control. Yama means to restrain or control. And what are you controlling here? You are controlling your behavior towards objects or people or animals around you. I'm not going to hurt people around me. I'm going to say and communicate truthfully. I'm going to not take from others. I'm not going to waste my sexual energy on others. I'm not going to grasp from around me. And these are social restraints. There are teachers that will say that the yamas are also towards ourselves, that we should not be harmful towards ourselves. We need to be truthful towards ourselves. We don't steal from ourselves. They say, you might hear teachings like, if you're doing a posture and you hurt yourself, then you're stealing the prana from your body because you're hurting yourself or something like that. And again, these are tweaks. People are making it up. But the yogis never meant for these yamas to be applied towards oneself, although that can be helpful. It can be a helpful way of looking at it. But again, these are social restraints. The 5 yamas or controls are nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, sexual restraint, and non-accumulation of possessions. So just remember it that way. If it helps you to be a better person, to apply ahimsa towards oneself, by all means. But that's not what Patanjali meant. These are known as the 5 vows, like promises that a yogi makes. We hear all the time, you might have heard this before, that the yamas and the niyamas, which is the next limb, and there are 5 and 5, the next limb are 5. So some people say, oh yeah, these are the 10 commandments of yoga. They're not commandments. These are vows. These are known as promises that a yogi makes when embarking on a yogic path. Does that make sense? They're not commandments. Thou must this, thou must that. Thou must not worship any other god other than me, or something like that. This is different. He's saying, be a good person. Make these vows, promises to yourselves. Promise to be a good person. Ramaswamy said they're not for everyday people. But these are the most important dharmas or duties of a yogi, are these yamas. Right. Moving on. Any questions on that before I move on? Any questions on the yamas, the 5 yamas? Very important. I can't see anybody. I can't hear anybody, so I'm assuming, is there a gallery view here? Okay, so I see Peter says no questions. Sorry, let me mess with this real quick here. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, moving on. 31. 31. Jati, Desha, Kala, Samaya, Anavachinaha, Sarva Bhoma, and Mahavratam. Mahavratam. Maha means great. Vratam means vow, promise. So these 5 yamas, ahimsa, and the other 4 yamas should be practiced without exception to species, place, time, occasion, and at all levels. This is the great vow. So jati means species. In other words, you apply these yamas to a worm as well as you would another Brahmin. Does that make sense? You treat every single creature, regardless of their birth, the same. You do it in all places. Desha means place. Kala means time, all the time. Samaya, all occasions. Anavachinaha means without exceptions, without break, without interruption. Sarvabhauma means at all levels. Higher beings, lower beings, all levels. Maha means great, vratam means vow. These are the great vows. In other words, was the golden rule? You guys know the golden rule? What's the golden rule?
Treat people like they are you.
Treat people like they are you. Similar, yeah.
Yeah. But do unto others as you want people to do to you.
Yes, that is what the gold, but that's only part of the golden rule. There's another part that a lot of people miss. The second half of that, Andrea, is all day, every day. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you all day, every day. Not Monday through Wednesday or Monday through Friday and not Saturday and Sunday, or like not Monday through Saturday and then on Sunday you put on your Sunday's best and do only the right things on Sunday. So it's all the time. It's do unto others as you had others do unto you all the time, anytime, all the time, any place, all the time, in all occasions, without exceptions, to all beings. So the yamas apply. So here he's saying that it is a great vow that a yogi makes. Now, these we can talk about the yamas for a very long time. We can do actually this whole course on just the yamas alone, but we're going to move on. But think about this: life is not black and white. There's gray area in life. Yeah, would you agree with that? There's always gray area. So, for example, ahimsa. There's a story that goes like this. These two boys were playing along the riverbanks, and they were messing with this turtle, and they would hit it with sticks and throw rocks at it and stuff, teasing the turtle, trying to get it to come out of its shell. But it wouldn't come out. It would retract. And along comes a yogi, and this yogi is like so committed. He's made these vows, these commitments, and he lived by them. So he's walking by, and the boy's like, yeah, yogi, can you help us get this turtle? And so he's like, ooh, I need to be truthful. I need to tell these kids how they can get the turtle. So he says, flip the turtle upside down, and then you'll expose its underbelly, and you'll be able to get the turtle. And he walks away. He's like, I told the truth. I'm doing good. I'm a good yogi. And yogi walks away. The boys end up killing the turtle. And then the yogi lives his life and goes to yogi heaven. And he's not let into yogi heaven. And so he's like, well, why? He goes, I've done everything right. I made the vows and I've never lied, blah, blah, blah. He goes, well, then do you remember that one time that you told the boys to flip the turtle upside down? He goes, yeah, that was the truth, wasn't it? It's like, well, yeah, it was the truth, but your words caused pain to the turtle. So he shouldn't have said that. He should have just kept his mouth shut. there's you've heard this before. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. So you have to know when it's appropriate to speak the truth and when it's appropriate to not say anything. There's also another story where the first, see this, so Satya, let me go back to that story. Satya, the yogi didn't think of ahimsa. Ahimsa being the first one listed is the most important thing. If any of the other actions violate the first yama, then you have missed the point, right? If you're saying the truth but you're causing violence, or if you're not stealing, you're not taking but you're causing violence, or you're hurting others, then it still violates it. So there's a lot of gray area. For example, a yogi's not supposed to hurt other beings. But what if the yogi was a doctor and the yogi was in the middle of a disaster? Let's say the yogi was in Lahaina, for example, and there was a child that was severely burnt, and the yogi doctor had to perform some kind of invasive surgery or something to try to save the child's life. But through the surgery ended up killing the baby or the child. It's like, so then now does the yogi doctor go to, or not get let into yogi heaven? So there's a lot of gray area here. But the idea is to always remember that if you're doing something and it violates the first one, the most important one, which is ahimsa or nonviolence, then you shouldn't do it at all. Make sense? But if it's your duty, then you got to do it without attachment. You do your best and leave the rest. You do your best and leave the rest. Let's say, what if you're like Arjuna and you're in a battle, and it's your duty to protect the king or protect the general, and it's your duty. I don't know. These scenarios are up for discussion forever. If you're doing your duty and you hurt somebody, but your duty was to stand up for what was just, should you have done it as a yogi, or do you run away? Do you retreat? Yes, Paul.
Well, along that same line, if you're being attacked and you have to be violent to protect yourself,
or your family, or yes, your friends, perhaps, yes. So yeah, so then are you violating your great vow? Like, I don't think so. I think that's if someone was messing with my daughter's star, I'm going to turn into Papa Bear. And regardless of my vows I made, right? So I don't know. There's something to that. There's something to that. So it's something that you can meditate and contemplate on and have discussions with your friends and peers. But there's a lot of gray area. This text is written pretty much kind of in black and white in that sense. One of the things that Ramaswamy said that stuck out is that when there's a conflict between the yamas, like truthfulness and non-harm, he says, seek the truth and say something that will not hurt others. Seek the truth. Seek the highest dharma. What is the highest dharma? The highest dharma is ahimsa, non-harm. Okay. This is again for a yogi. All right, looks like there's some chats here. Let me see, what is this? No questions, apologies, you're forgiven. Do unto others as you would have others do unto yourself. Yes, okay. All day, every day. I have a shirt that says all day, every day. All day, every day. Do my best, leave the rest, right? Okay, 32, you guys. 32. So this is the one on the niyamas. So everyone say saucha, saucha, saucha. I'm sorry, shaucha, shaucha, shaucha. S with a line across the accent that goes across is a SH. So shaucha, santosha, tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhanani, niyamaha. So what is it? Saucha means cleanliness or purity of the body, mind, internal organs. Again, this practice, the practice of the body is Hatha Yoga. And in Hatha Yoga, that's a different text, right? The Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It's a different text. And in Hatha Yoga, we have several practices. One is asanas, another one is pranayama, one is mudras or bandhas, and then the other ones are kriyas. Kriyas are purifications. And so saucha means to purify, to clean the body, the mind, and the internal organs. And there are kriya practices such as Kapalabhati, Nadi Shodhana, and also there are some Ayurvedic cleansing techniques as well that are yogic in nature. Santosha is the next one, santosha. Sometimes you'll see this spelled as samtosha. Santosha and samtosha are the same thing. It means contentment. It means to be happy with what you have, and most of us aren't. Most of us are not happy with what we have. We want more. We want more, always wanting more, wanting. It is when you release your desires, your wants, is that when you can find happiness. Think about this for a moment. Anyone get a new car or a big purchase recently? Anybody? Big purchase, or you got something that you want? Anybody? Do you remember the last big purchase you had that made you really happy? You guys remember the last big purchase or the last big accomplishment? Think about it. The moment that you got what you wanted, you became super happy. The moment before you got what you wanted, you were still full of desire. It is the moment that you attained what you wanted as you realize happiness. So therefore, happiness is the elimination of desire. Right? Think about that. Happiness is the elimination of desire. How happy were you when you got crow for the first time? Right? You wanted it and you got it, and so your desire had been extinguished and you became happy. And then the happiness went away as soon as you wanted to do your crow again. And then you didn't do it. The second time you try it, you fall and you're like, oh, desire's there, but you couldn't get it. So now you're unhappy again. You understand? So contentment is truly the fountain of happiness. It is the fountain of joy. When one can achieve a level of desirelessness, we talked about this in the first chapter. Remember Vitaragi? A Vitaragi is a yogi who's desireless. One who is desireless is always happy. Isn't it? One who's desireless is always happy because anything that comes their way is a blessing. But if you're always wanting and wanting and wanting, we see this with spoiled, privileged, the privileged, they're never happy. Yes? Always wanting. I remember when I first started, the second time I met Dharma Mitra. Yeah, Dharma Mitra, the teacher Dharma Mitra. I would consider him an enlightened being. I met him in 2010 for the first time, and I think I met him again in 2013, second time. And he remembered me, and he goes, "You're not so greedy anymore." I was like, "What?" It's like, "You don't know me. I'm not greedy." He goes, he was right. I wasn't when I first met him, I was still new on my journey. I was very greedy. Want. And I remember him saying back then, reduce your wants. I'm like, what was that? What'd you say? Reduce your what? Reduce your wants. W-A-N-T-S. Reduce your wants. Reduce your wants and be happy. Reduce your wants, your desires. And then when I saw him again in New York, he was like, he goes, because you are not so greedy anymore. It's like, okay. Thought about it. I was like, I think you're right. Because I was much more happy the second time I met him than the first time I met him. It was because I learned to embrace or to tap into this feeling of santosha, the joy, the fountain of joy. Tapaha or tapaha, same as tapas, is now you'll see again. This so many people will say it differently. There's a school here down the street. They call tapas fiery discipline. Fiery discipline, and they use it. And they say having the discipline to show up on your mat is tapas, and I will agree with that, but it's not what the yogis meant. What the yogis meant was it's the discipline of the senses. Discipline of the senses. We talked about this earlier. When did we talk about this? When we explored the idea of Kriya Yoga. Remember? Kriya Yoga is tapas. And what's the second one? Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is here. The next one is Swadhyaya. And then Ishvara Pranidhana. So Kriya Yoga is really a tiny sliver of Ashtanga Yoga. You have the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. The second limb is Niyama. There are 5 Niyamas. And the last 3 are tapas, Swadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana, surrendering to the Lord. So, or surrendering to a higher power, or a unique, or the way Patanjali explains it, a unique consciousness that's unaffected by time, karma, and pain. Okay. So, yeah, Kriya Yoga is just a small part of Ashtanga Yoga, part of the Niyamas. So if the yamas are social restraints, how you interact with the world around you, the niyamas are how you interact with yourself. Another translation for niyama is self-observations, or I'm sorry, observances, self-observances. But can also mean constantly. Because I'm like, Ramaswamy, it doesn't make sense to me. Yama means control, and you're saying niyama is that controlling towards myself. He goes, well, no, ni actually means constantly. So you're in constant control. You're constantly trying to keep your body clean. You're constantly trying to find contentment. You're constantly, it's just, I mean, I'm like, but yamas are the same way. It's all day, every day, at all times, in all places, all occasions, in all forms. So really, the foundation of yoga, according to Patanjali, the foundation of yoga lies in the yamas and niyamas. They are like the 10 commandments, but they're not like the 10 commandments. They are the 10 promises that a yogi makes. So they're kind of like the commandments, just a little different energy around it. Does that make sense? It's not like Patanjali saying, you must this, you must that. It's like, if you want this, you do that. Okay, so yeah, so yeah, cleanliness, contentment, austerities or discipline of the senses, studies, self-studies, and surrendering the fruits of one's actions to the Lord are called the niyamas. Ramaswamy said something that was interesting that I wrote down. He said that a discontented yogi and a contented king are not good. Kings and yogis are different. He goes, do you don't want in your yogi a greedy person, but on the same token, you don't want a king that's passive. Right? Does that make sense? You want a king that will step up and protect his sheep. You want a king that's going to make things better. So a king actually is rajasic. A king is rajasic. A yogi is sattvic. So it's interesting. He said a discontented yogi is not a good thing, and a contented king, a king who sits back on his laurels. A king who sits back on his laurels. You don't want a president who's just going to sit back on his laurels. Right? You want a president, a ruler, a leader to lead, not to sit back and be content. Yogis are different. Yogis are not you know, they're in the world but not of it. They're just different. Right. All right. 33. Vitarka, badhane, pratipaksha, bhavanam. This is a great sutra. These yamas and niyamas are very difficult. Yes, would you say? It's difficult to not be violent. It's difficult to not be truthful. It's difficult to not want to take something that's not yours. Look at kids. Look how they act. They're just following their minds and their hearts, and they don't have discernment. And they will lie easily until they're taught not to lie, or experience through bad consequences. But so if someone has never been exposed to these practices or teachings, what do they do? How do you do it? It's like, so he's saying, what Patanjali is saying here is that vitarka means to think of the other, counter argument. Vitarka means against, V means against, tarka means argument. So the counter argument, the counter thought, when affected, badhane, when affected, pratipaksha is like, again, countering, to think of the opposite. So in other words, for example, if you're having a violent thought, think of what is the opposite. Instead of having a violent thought, try to think of the loving thought. If you have a tendency to want to be untruthful, think of the opposite. What's the opposite of untruth? Truth. What's the opposite of stealing? Non-stealing. So just think of the opposite. Right. Whenever the mind is affected, due to the counter arguments or counter tendencies, think of the other side. This refers to specifically the yamas and niyamas. Okay? It happens a lot. Students come, well, teacher, I have a tendency to be violent in my practice. I overstretch and I tend to hurt myself, especially when I'm angry. I had a bad day with my friend, partner, or colleague, and then I just want to go into my yoga practice and stretch really hard and hurt myself. It's a rajasic tendency. Some people do that. Or just think of the other. Get into your practice and set an intention to practice lovingly, compassionately, and you start to develop. It's like a muscle. It's like any muscle. If you engage the muscle over time, it'll get stronger and stronger. If you don't engage it, it gets weaker and weaker. So if your mind thinks about harming, taking, lying, and you can't force the thought into your mind when that happens, then you're going to create a samskara of lying, hurting, stealing, etc. So just constantly remind yourself to think of the other, and slowly over time, that pattern or samskara will replace the old pattern. Krishnamacharya would say that yoga is a process of replacing old patterns with new and more appropriate patterns. There's a meme. You guys seen it? It's a really strong, it's a really powerful, I love it. It's let's see. Yoga is the process of replacing images. Here we go. Let us screen share. Boom. Here it is. Here we go. Can y'all see that? Yoga is a process of replacing old patterns with new and more appropriate patterns. So that's all we're doing. This is the practice of yoga. Okay. "34. Any questions right now? Questions or comments? Okay. Okay, moving on. 34. Vitarka, again, vitarka, opposite tendencies. Him sadhaya, violence or harming somebody. Krita, personally done harm. Krita means doing, so referring to doing harm. Karita, causes someone else to do harm. Anumoditaha, approved of harm. Labda, greed, krodha, anger. Moha, infatuation. Purvaka, purva means anterior, to proceed or actuated by. Mridu means mild. Madhya means moderate. Adimatra means fierce. These are the different levels. Dukkha, pain. Ajnana, ignorance. Anantapala, ananta means endless, pala means results, endless results. In other words, it'll keep going if you don't do anything about it. Iti, in this manner. Iti, pratipaksha bhavanam, thinking of the opposite. So this sutra is about the three ways to transgress the yamas and niyamas. So let's break this down. So there are three types of harm. What are the three types? The kind that I do to myself, self-harm. The other type of harm is when someone does harm to me, right? When someone else does harm to me. And then the third type is sort of like approval of that harm, or for example, laughing at someone else's misfortune. You're not really causing harm. They've harmed themselves or they've gotten harmed by someone else, but then you laugh. So this is you see this all the time at like comedy shows. And a lot of comedy is based on this idea. It's really interesting. You know, when someone stubs their toe or trips over a ledge, then we find it funny, right? We see these videos all the time, right? What's that? Fail Army online? Have you ever seen Fail Army? It's just a collection of fail videos, and we're like, oh, and we laugh and we sort of approve it. It's a very tamasic. That's a very tamasic energy, by the way. So these three types of harm, and then whenever the yogi, the Ashtanga yogi, is confronted with the counter tendencies, violence, untruth, stealing, whether he acts personally, causes others to do so, or approves of these actions, they should think and remember of these forbidden actions as have they been actuated by greed, enmity, infatuation, which can be of different intensities. They can be mild, moderate, or intense, and will lead only to perpetual unlimited pain and ignorance. Thus, he or she must meditate or contemplate on the opposite, such as non-greed, non-violence, etc. One of the things that Ramaswamy said that stuck out was he said, an angry young boy will grow up to be an angrier old man. Right? An angry child will grow up to be an angrier, like grumpy old man, right? Unless something changes. He says some skaras will always get stronger over time. Patterns and tendencies always get stronger over time unless something is done to interrupt the pattern. It reminds me of that bridge video. Have you seen that oscillating bridge video? You guys ever seen, is it the Tacoma Bridge collapse? Have you guys seen that? Okay, so this is
It's
it.
time to bring your dream backyard to life, and you can create the ultimate
Ads.
escape with living
Hang on.
spaces in our exciting.
The Tacoma Bridge collapse. This is what it reminds me of. It starts
Tacoma Bridge, Washington, opened only a few months ago, was built at a cost of over $6 million. But misfortune overtakes the great structure. These are some of the most amazing
So it
pictures
starts
ever
off
recorded
slow,
by a newsreel.
and then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just keeps growing. This is some star. Unless something is done to interrupt the pattern, it just oscillates, and the frequency builds and builds and builds, and the rivets pop out and the cables snap. Next thing you know, you have a collapse of the bridge.
Only at
Make
35
sense?
mile an hour wind is blowing.
Very
but
similar
this
to the energy
apparently sets up a
of
rhythmic swinging of
samskara.
the bridge, which increases with each swing.
You ever sit there, you ever get into a yoga pose and you're maybe at your edge of strength and you start shaking, you keep staying longer and longer, that shaking gets bigger and bigger, and you start wobbling and shaking, and next thing you know, you're off balance. Same
Finally,
thing
the
that happens.
swinging road and the
So that's kind of like, in my mind, that's kind of like what the samskara is. The angry young boy turns into an angrier old man unless something changes, because samskaras always get stronger. Okay. That's an interesting sutra. So here, 35, he goes on to talk about the benefits of Yama Niyamas. The benefits of Yama Niyamas. These are sort of siddhis. You guys know what siddhis means? Siddhi, siddha, siddhi. Siddhi means S-I-D-D-H-I, siddhi. Siddhi means perfections, accomplishments, or extraordinary powers or powers. And so these are the benefits. So he's sort of mentioning some of the siddhis here. Okay. Ahimsa, non-violence. Pratishtayam means when established, when non-violence is established. Tat, this, that. Here he's saying it's his or, she says his or her. Sanidho, in their presence, or in the environment, when they are in the environment. Vairatyagaha, vaira means violence or enmity, and tyagaha means to give up. So in the presence of a yogi who is established in ahimsa, violence is given up. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means there are two interpretations here, that in the presence of a yogi who has perfected non-violence, those around him will also be non-violent. That's one interpretation. So, for example, if you walk into a room where people are quarreling and you are a non-violent saint, I'm not a non-violent saint, I cannot command a room like that, but if a non-violent saint walks into a room, everyone will stop fighting. Does that make sense? The other interpretation of the sutra is that that no one will be violent towards the yogi. For example, it is said that a yogi who has mastered ahimsa can stand in front of a raging bull or elephant, a raging male elephant, when they have their tears going down, when they're, I don't know what they call it, when the elephants are not in heat, but when the males they're musky, when the male elephant's musky and they're full of rage, they're ready to mate or destroy things, right? They say that a yogi established in ahimsa can stand in front of a raging bull and calm it just by being in the presence of the animal. Does that make sense? That's what this is saying here. So this is a power that violence can be given up in the presence of a ahimsa yogi. 36, satya. This is an interesting one. Satya, kriya means action, and the action here refers to the speech. Pala, results. The benefit is that a yogi who's established in this truthfulness of speaking, that their words will always come true. So this is one reason why yogis were feared. People in India thought that the yogi's word and whatever they would say would come true. So they were afraid of yogis cursing them. But the yogi would never curse them. A real yogi, the perfected yogi, but how many are perfected, right? The perfected yogi would never say anything that would violate ahimsa. So they wouldn't do that unless they were failing as a yogi. But yeah, once a yogi is established in truthfulness, whatever a yogi says comes true. Think about this. A yogi will not speak unless it's true. As a matter of fact, a yogi practices mauna most of the time. What is mauna? Mauna is not speaking. It's golden silence, the practice of not speaking, being silent. And so what happens is if you do this practice over time, and if you do the practice of mauna, that you will find that you will only speak when necessary. And 99% of the time, it seems like it's unnecessary. Most speech is unnecessary. So then you have a throttle on output, right? Now you're throttling your output, and then you realize that you won't say anything unless it's true to you or it makes sense because you've witnessed the history and you see what future is coming, so you say it and it's true. A yogi doesn't speak endlessly. A yogi only speaks when needed. As a matter of fact, you'll find most yogis are in silence most of the time. But when a yogi does speak, though, it's probably going to be true. This is a power a yogi gets when mastering satya. A yogi who has reached this level of truthfulness is known as a rishi. You ever heard of rishis? What is a rishi? Patanjali is known as a rishi. Rishi means a highly evolved yogi who sees and speaks the truth. A rishi means one who speaks the truth. They speak the truth because they can see it. Rishi. It's similar to the word drishti. Yeah, you ever heard of the word drishti? Drishti means gaze. But a rishi is one who sees truth. And one who sees truth will speak truth. As a matter of fact, in the Ashtanga sequence, there's a, we have the 6 sequences. I'm sorry, 4 really, depending on who you talk to, right? Elementary series, second series or intermediate series. And then you have the advanced A and advanced B. Now, there's another series that most people don't know exists. It's called the Rishi series. Have you heard of it? Anybody heard the Rishi series? Let's see, Josh, you there, Josh? Gallery, there's a gallery view. Oh, it's Josh.
Yeah,
Is he on? There
I'm
he is.
here.
Yeah, have you heard of the Rishi series?
Is it the series of life?
Uh-uh.
No, and then I have it.
The Rishis, yeah, you're not going to hear about this unless you talk to some of the old guys. But the Rishi series is once you've done all the when you've accomplished first, second, third, fourth, and fifth series, then you go back and you pick 10 postures and you do each posture for 50 breaths. Then the next day you drop off the first posture, add the next posture in the sequence, and then you move down the sequence that way. And it's the Rishi series. Each posture, 50 breaths. 50 breaths, Rishi series. That's the highest level. But yeah, so a Rishi is the highest level of accomplished yogi, one who sees truth. Because that's the whole goal, is to really learn to see the truth. What truth? The truth of who I am. The truth of who I am. 37 Ashteya, non-stealing. So what happens when you master non-stealing? Sarva means all. Ratna means jewels. Ratna means jewels. That you are able to find hidden jewels that are near you or around you. In other words, one is able to accumulate all the wealth in the world because they have learned not to steal. This is a karmic sutra. That if you master non-stealing, you don't take what's not yours, then you can have it all. Think about that. If you can master not stealing, you can have it all. If a person established in non-stealing, he possesses high quality, highly prized or priceless stones. There's a golden axe story. I don't know. I'm gonna give you the short version of the golden axe story. There's a man who is a sadhu. You know what a sadhu is? Sadhu, sadhu, a sadhu. So you hear these words sadhu, rishi, these highly accomplished yogis. Sadhu means one with good character. A sadhu means a good person. A sadhu, usually a wandering yogi. They're sadhus. You see, when I hear sadhu, I think of a yogi with dreadlocks covered in ashes, walking with a trident and a loincloth. And they're just supposed to be good people. But nowadays you have a bunch of charlatans and fakes and stuff. They're trying to take money from people, but you can't tell anymore. I've never been to India, but that's what I hear. Anyways, a real sadhu is a person with good moral character. And a sadhu loses his axe. He has got an ordinary axe. He loses the axe, but everything he's done up to that point has been virtuous and dharmic. So God rewards him with a golden axe. And his neighbor, who's not a sadhu, sees this and tries to do the same thing and loses his axe. And he gets rewarded with nothing. We see this happening in life, right? Sometimes we see, like, how does this person always have good fortune? They lose one thing and they get 10 rewards. I lose one thing, or you see someone else lose something and it's like, God, and there's no replacement. What's going on here? It's a karmic thing, right? It's a karmic thing. So be a good person and good things come to you, right? One may argue, well, bad things happen to good people. Well, that's true too, but bad today could be good tomorrow, right? You ever heard the story of the Zen farmer? The Zen farmer, you guys have heard the Zen farmer? Zen farmer goes out into the forest and comes back with this amazing, like, beautiful, wild stallion. It's a beautiful horse, but it's wild. And as he's walking into the village, his neighbor goes, "Oh, what good fortune! What good fortune! You have one of the most beautiful and strong horses I've ever seen. What good fortune!" And then the next day, the Zen farmer's son is out there trying to, break the horse or tame the horse. And it's wild, it's crazy, it's kicking everywhere, and throws him off his back, and he lands and breaks his arm. And the neighbor's like, "Oh, what bad fortune! What bad fortune! Your horse injured your son, broke his arm. What bad fortune!" Every time he says, "Oh, good," "Oh, bad," "Oh, good," the Zen farmer says, "We'll see." He doesn't say it's good or bad. He says, "We'll see." And then a few weeks later, the country goes to war, and the imperialists, or the noblemen, come in on horses, and they're out recruiting all the able men to fight. And they draft every male in the village except for the son that broke his arm. And the Zen farmer's neighbor goes, "That horse, such good fortune, such good fortune." And Zen farmer says, "We'll see." So we don't know what's good or bad today, because good news today is bad news tomorrow, and bad news today, good news today can be bad news tomorrow. Did I say that right? Good news today, bad news tomorrow. Bad news today, good news tomorrow. So nothing's good nor bad, just what you make it, but you just need to sit back and we'll see. Right. Okay, brahmacharya, number 38, second chapter 38. Brahmacharya, celibacy, when established, gives you virya. Virya means vitality. Again, I mentioned this earlier. It's when one is established in celibacy, the yogi gets vitality, gets strong and fast. Number 39, aparigraha, non-grabbing or non-accumulation. When established, janma means birth. Katamta means how it was previously. So, and sambodha, which means to clearly understand or know. So when this one, I don't get this one, because clearly I have not mastered non-grabbing or non-accumulation. You should see my shoe collection. Anyways, when one is established in aparigraha, one can understand previous births. In other words, you can know your past lives. If a person is established in non-accumulation, he or she sees clearly their previous births, which is wild. I don't get it because I have not been there, but this is what he says. We tried to talk to Ramaswamy about it, but he wouldn't entertain us. He was like, let's just keep going. So only one way to find out is let go of all your possessions and live in poverty. Maybe you can figure out where you came from, past lives. Paul and I had a conversation about past lives and future lives recently, and it was very interesting. So,
Ricky,
yes.
wouldn't hypnotism be a way to, I don't want to say fake letting go of accumulations, but in a hypnotic state, couldn't that accumulating barrier be eliminated so that you could see past lives?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't see how it could be. I mean, it could. We've seen it demonstrated, but I mean, how real is it? Right? I don't know.
And I guess that's why kids who can recall past lives, they haven't started accumulating or haven't been taught to accumulate, so they're still pure enough to be able to see those previous.
Could be. I would subscribe to that idea more than the hypnotic state. The closer you are to your birth, the closer you are to birth, the closer you are to past life, right? The further away you are from the moment you were born, the further you're away from your past life. So it just makes sense to me that kids would have a better recollection of past life than adults. As a matter of fact, there's a book called Life Before Life. There's a book called Life Before Life. Let's go here. Life Before Life. And there's a bunch of other books written by the same author. His name is Dr. Jim Tucker. I used to require this in teacher training. One of the first few. It's a scientific investigation of children's memories of past lives. It's a fascinating book. You know, we don't know what's going to happen after, but we can explore what happened in the past. And this is sort of like going back, and they have a scientific approach to it. It's really fascinating. I've read it a couple times. They did the study over 40 years, 4 decades, where they would send, whenever a child would talk about a past life, whether in the West or in the East, because different cultures have different viewpoints on this, but they would send a team of child psychologists or psychologists to come and talk to the child and take their statements. And they would, these kids would talk about times in history that they had no experience. They were never there, but they were able to recall landmarks and events that happened that can be documented. And whenever they would find a life that resembled or matched the stories they were telling, they would solve a case. And after 40 years of research, they were able to document 2,500 solved cases of past life connections to current life kids. Fascinating. So yeah, it's called Life Before Life. You might want to check it out. Right. Okay. 8:10. Man, time is flying, eh? One of the things Ramaswamy said about this aparigraha is that the accumulation of money tends to end in suffering. The accumulation of money tends to, so you work hard for your money, you work hard to keep it, you work hard to spend it, and then there's loss. Pretty sad outlook. But if you think about it, more energy is spent trying to keep what you have than going out to earn it. If you had $1 million, you would probably spend more energy trying to keep that from being stolen than if you didn't have $1 million and you went out to work for it, right? There's a whole lot more energy that comes into like trying to keep what you have, and that's a result of this graha, grasping. And so aparigraha is the opposite. Okay, 40, this is about the body. This one's about the body. Saucha, what is saucha? This is now niyama, right? Now we're in the niyamas. Saucha, so when cleanliness is perfected, when cleanliness is perfected, you develop what's called jigupsa. Jigupsa means a dislike of one's own body, shvanga, and others. It's weird. When you perfect cleanliness, you end up disliking your body, because what does your body do? It constantly produces earwax, doesn't it? Your nails are always growing, your hair is growing, your skin's flaking, you're always creating, your body's shedding skin all the time. You've got snot and mucus, you've got your mouth and teeth, develop plaque based on what you eat. Your butt crack stinks, right? I mean, all the things, because you're constantly trying to keep your body clean. You get sick and tired of it. Imagine, 100 years of this. At some point, you're going to be like, all right, I'm kind of tired of cleaning myself, right? At some point, you're going to start. And then what he's saying here is that you're going to develop a dislike of touching other bodies as well, because you've developed such a purity in your mind, in your body, and you don't want to touch others. It's weird. I think he's talking about OCD here, but and it reminds me of Johnny Carson. Do you guys remember when Johnny Carson retired? He became so OCD. He was a germaphobe. He would even wear like rubber gloves in his own house. Anyways, that's pretty wild. I don't really understand this, but I mean, I do understand, and I have experienced some of this as well. It's like, whenever you're clean, you don't want to get unclean, right? So a yogi who practices cleanliness eventually develops a dislike for their own body and avoids physical contact with others. Yeah. One of the things that hardcore yogis practice is to bathe before and after asana practice. To bathe before and after asana practice. I used to do this. I make sure that I'm clean before I do asanas, and make sure and then wash up afterwards. So it's nice. You start to see changes in your body. All right, number 41. Number 41. What is this? So this is an extension of the previous sutra, adding on to Saucha. But this last one was about the body. Here he's talking about the mind, the intellect. So sattva shuddhi. Shuddhi is like purification. It says becomes clean here in the book, but it means purification. So a purified intellect, a sattva, a purified intellect, a sattvic intellect, or a sattvic mind has three, these are the three, you get saumanasya, manas means mind, the feeling or sense of pleasantness or a good feeling. We can say peaceful. This is like a peaceful feeling. It's not quite happy, it's just a good feeling, right? A good peaceful feeling. Eka griya, eka means one, like ekagrata, ekagriya, one point in mind. Indriya yajaya, mastery of the senses. Hey Star, I need you to take a shower now, please. It's 8:15. Indriya jaya. Jai means like ujjayi. What is it? Ujjayi means victorious breath. Jai means victory. Here he said Indriya means senses. Here it means senses. Really means organs, but here it means senses. Jnana Indriyas. Indriya Jaya is mastery of the senses, or victory over the senses, or control over the senses. Atma darshana is knowing the Atma. The Atma is the soul, the self or consciousness. So darshan means to see or know. So seeing the self, knowing the self. Yatavani is fitness, cha and. So what does the sutra say? It says that when saucha or cleanliness of the mind is practiced, the intellect becomes pure. There's a good feeling, a one-pointed mind, mastery of the senses, and fit to experience the self. So purification of the body will lead to disgust. Purification of the body will lead to disgust, and purification of the mind will make one fit to experience the self. Okay? And an impure mind is unfit to experience the self. In other words, what is an impure mind? What does that mean? Does it mean you have impure thoughts? No. It means that the mind is not sattvic. So you have rajasic mind and tamasic mind. Remember 3 gunas? So if an impure mind is a mind that is full or has a mixture of rajas and tamas. But when you can reduce the rajas and tamas to the point where it's almost non-existent, then you're highly dominant by sattva. A sattvic mind means the mind is filled with truth. No hair wash. No hair wash, baby. Okay, baby, just brush it, okay? Hey, wash all your crevices, okay? Oh yeah, sorry. Wash everything.
Forget he said that.
Hey, I love you.
Stop saying that.
I'm sorry. All right, bye-bye. Gotta go. Gotta finish up. My bad, Dad. I don't mean to be. Okay. Yeah, so a pure mind is not one that's got dirty thoughts or whatever. Impure mind, according to the yogis, is a mind that is full of rajas and tamas. Rajas and tamas tendencies. Okay? We just want to go sattva. So the first word of the sutra is sattva. Sattva, sattva. Here's a note. A clean mind becomes peaceful and fit for yoga. A rajasic mind is not fit for yoga, and a tamasic mind is not fit for yoga. A rajasic and tamasic mind are dragged around by the senses. I'll say that again. A rajasic mind and a tamasic mind will be dragged around by the senses. Does that make sense? But a sattvic mind is one who has mastery over the senses, overcome addiction, etc. (42). This one is about santosha. Remember I told you santosha is also samtosha? Well, what's the first word here? Samtosh. Samtos sat. Or shat. Samtoshat. He's referring to santosh. It's the same word. Same thing. Out of contentment, anutamaha, unsurpassed, sukha, agreeable mental space or joy, labdaha is attained. Labdaha means is obtained. So arising out of contentment and unsurpassed agreeable internal mental space is attained. In other words, samtosha is the fountain of joy, like I said earlier. The word sam, or sam, S-A-M, means completely or totally, like samastitihi, right? Or samadhi, right? Or samyama means complete or total. Sam means completely. Tosh means satisfied. Samtosha means completely satisfied. Completely satisfied is content. Yes? Yes. Yes. You know, it's interesting, you know, when I was introduced to these practices, I really wholeheartedly tried to be a yogi. And I remember I was on tour a lot. I would travel around the country and teach, and people would ask, aren't you homesick? Like, don't you miss being at home? You're always on the road. And my initial response was no, because I'm content wherever I go. Everywhere I go feels like home, no matter where I am. Contentment is just being happy where you are. If you can just access that space, everywhere is home. Yeah? I remember these experiences. All right, we'll do, I think we'll do 3 more and we'll call it a day. It's good timing. 43, kaya refers to the body. Indriya means organs, but here refers to the senses. Siddhi, here's that word that comes up. Siddhi means perfection or accomplishment. Ashuddhi refers to impurities. Kshayat, due to the reduction of, is tapasya. So from the practice of tapas or austerities, perfect function of the body and the senses take place due to the reduction of the impurities. In other words, because tapas practice is the discipline of the senses become perfected. And the way you accomplish that is through moderation. Mitahara, we talked about this previously, I don't know if you remember that, but mitahara, to moderate your food, moderate your speech, right? Moderate what you eat, moderate what you take in, and moderate what your output is. If you moderate that, then you will have a perfectly functioning body and senses. Now, I want to say that this probably, and just from experience, is that it's probably more likely to happen when you're less than 40 years old. Because at some point, we lose our prowess. And I mean, for example, these readers, I attained them last year in the late age of 46, 45. It was the first time in my 30s, everything was wonderful. 40s is when I started noticing my vision getting bad. But then again, I haven't been doing daily 20-minute headstands. I was doing headstands every day for an extended period of time. Okay, 44, Swadhyaya, so arising out of the study and the practice of the scriptures. Ishtadeva means one's chosen deity, like a particular deity that according to your preference, your lineage, or your religion. Sam prayogaha is communion. Sam means complete. Pra means thoroughness, complete, total and complete communion or union with one's deity. By observing Swadhyaya, communion with one's chosen deity takes place. Okay, 45. Samadhi. Samadhi refers to undisturbed concentration, unbroken concentration, or total concentration. Siddhi means perfection. Ishvara pranidhanat, so surrender to the Lord. By total concentration, Samadhi is attained by surrendering the results of all right actions to Ishvara. Okay, that's Ishvara pranidhana. So this is the 3rd time he's mentioned Ishvara in the sutras. And this is the end of the Niyama. This is the end of the Niyama. So we have just covered the first 2 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. We've just covered the first 2 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, the Yamas and Niyamas. The 46th Sutra is on asanas. We will continue there. I want to stop and add something. I'm going to write this in the chat. You guys, can you see this in the chat? This is a Ramaswamy quote. And he said, the goal of Ashtanga Yoga is the goal of Ashtanga Yoga is get this right. Oh, where is it? I have to access this through memory now. The goal of Ashtanga yoga. No, I'm sorry, the goal of yoga, not Ashtanga yoga. The goal of yoga is to eliminate suffering. Eliminate suffering. The goal of yoga is to eliminate suffering, and the goal of yoga is eliminate suffering through let's see, we call it dukkha, through discernment, which is viveka, constant discernment, viveka khyati, and the means is Ashtanga yoga, which lies on the foundation of Yama and Niyama. Boom. That's a Ramaswamy quote. Y'all see that? Cute. The Ramaswamy quote. The goal of yoga is to eliminate suffering, to destroy suffering, dukkha, through constant discernment of knowing who I am versus who I am not, right? To have this understanding of who I am and who I am not, which is viveka khyati, through, and the means is Ashtanga yoga, which lies on the foundation of the yamas and niyamas, or what we just covered today. Today's lecture has been on the foundation of the practice of Ashtanga yoga, and we haven't even gotten to the asanas yet. So with that said, you guys, it is 8:29. Do we have any comments or questions that I can answer quickly?
Can you remind me what Samasthitihi means?
Samastitihi?
Yes.
So sama means total or complete, and stitihi means steady. Stiti means steady. So complete balance and steadiness. Samastitihi means complete balance and steadiness.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Looks like Pete gave another Ramaswamy quote. The goal of classical yoga is to remove the impediments which obscure our true nature. What are the impediments? The impediments are rajas and tamas, which ultimately lead to avidya, ignorance, or wrong knowledge of the self. I've said this over and over again that the problem is a classic case of mistaken identity. That's really the case that we all see. And you see this theme in lots of literature and art, this idea of identity, of who am I? You see it in movies. The main character has this sort of, or the archetype, the hero archetype goes through. Anyways, you see this all the time. Now that you're exposed to it, you will probably see it more. Kind of like if you've never had a Lincoln, all of a sudden you bought a Lincoln and you see Lincolns all over the road. Same thing's going to happen here. You're going to see this idea that mistaken identity has led many a people to a state of suffering or confusion, which is suffering as well. With that said, let's go ahead and close up shop today. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vadhi Tamastu Ma Vidvisha Vahai Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Om Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarotam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjalirannatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankachakra Siddharanam Sahasrashirasham Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Srimate Anantaya Nagarajaya Namo Namaha Namo Namaha Namo Namaha Om. Thanks, you guys. I'll upload this onto our page. You guys still have access to the page, yes? On the website, yeah. I'll upload this and it'll be available for your viewing pleasure. Have a great evening, you guys. Just another word. I'm going to be in Italy this next couple weeks, so we're going to have to move this next date to beyond the last one. So we're just going to have to add an extra date. I think you guys might have seen that on the WhatsApp. Is everyone okay with that? Yeah, okay. We'll just add another date down the road. Thanks so much. Have a great evening. I love you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good to see you.